Hey everyone. Um, I wanted to do the series of 3 videos where I can share what I feel have been 3 catalysts in arriving at the recognition of truth. So today I plan to share about the first catalyst, which is this beautiful discourse, the second discourse by the Buddha after his enlightenment, which is the Anattalakhana Sutta. So the first, it's been a strange journey, of course, and the first time I heard this chant, I feel like beyond the meaning of the words, which sort of maybe helped to some extent come to the recognition or understanding or served as a catalyst in that. But there's also a place for the chants itself, the vibrations, or maybe even hearing a person who has understood this sort of chant it, and maybe somehow that understanding percolates through to you in some way that is beyond our understanding right now. Um, so I would love to chant this sutta and then maybe share whatever is my understanding as I understand it with everyone. Okay. नमो तस्स अरहतो भगवतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स अरहतो भगवतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स अरहतो भगवतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स एवं मे सुतन् एकं समयं भगवा वाराणस्यं विहरति सिपतने मिगताय तत्र को भगवा पञ्चवग्ये भिक्खु आमन्तेसि रूपं भिक्खवे अनत्ता रूपं च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभ्भविस्स नैदं रूपम् आबाधाय संवत्तेय लभता च रूपे एवं मे रूपं होतु एवं मे रूपं मा अहोसीति यस्माच्च को भिक्खवे रूपम् अनत्ता तस्मा रूपम् आबाधाय संवत्तति न च लभते रूपे एवं मे रूपं होतु एवं मे रूपं मा अहोसीति वेदना अनत्ता वेदना च इदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभ्भविस्स नैदं वेदना आबाधाय संवत्तेय लभता च वेदनाय एवं मे वेदना होतु एवं मे वेदना मा अहोसीति यस्माच्च को भिक्खवे वेदना अनत्ता तस्मा वेदना आबाधाय संवत्तति न च लभति वेदनाय एवं मे वेदना होतु एवं मे वेदना मा अहोसीति संज्ञा अनत्ता संज्ञा च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभ्भविस्स नैदं संज्ञा आबाधाय संवत्तेय लभता च संज्ञाय एवं मे संज्ञा होतु एवं मे संज्ञा मा अहोसीति यस्माच्च को भिक्खवे संज्ञा अनत्ता तस्मा संज्ञा आबाधाय संवत्तति न च लभति संज्ञाय एवं मे संज्ञा होतु एवं मे संज्ञा मा अहोसीति संखारा अनत्ता संखारा च इदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभ्भविस्स नैदं संखारा आबाधाय संवत्तेय लभता च संखारेषु एवं मे संखारा होतु एवं मे संखारा मा अहोसीति यस्माच्च को भिक्खवे संखारा अनत्ता तस्मा संखारा आबाधाय संवत्तति न च लभति संखारेषु एवं मे संखारा होतु एवं मे संखारा मा अहोसीति विज्ञानम् अनत्ता विज्ञानं च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभ्भविस्स नैदं विज्ञानम् आबाधाय संवत्तय्य लभता च विज्ञाने एवं मे विज्ञानं होतु एवं मे विज्ञानं मा अहोसीति यस्माचको भिक्खवे विज्ञानम् अनत्ता तस्मा विज्ञानम् आबाधाय संवत्तति न च लभति विज्ञाने एवं मे विज्ञानं होतु एवं मे विज्ञानं मा अहोसीति तं किं मन्यत्त भिक्खवे रूपं नित्यं वा अनित्यं वाति अनित्यं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लन्नूतं समनुपस्थितम् एतं मम एषोऽहमस्मि एषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतं भन्ते वेदना नित्या वा अनित्या वाति अनित्या भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लन्नूतं समनुपस्थितम् एतं मम एषोऽहमस्मि एषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतन् भन्ते सन्न्यानिच्छा वा अनिच्छा वाति अनिच्छा भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लन्नूतं समनुपस्थितम् एतं मम एषोऽहमस्मि एषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतन् भन्ते संखारानिच्छा वा अनिच्छा वाति अनिच्छा भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लन्नूतं समनुपस्थितम् एतं मम एषोऽहमस्मि एषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतन् भन्ते विज्ञानं नित्यं वा अनित्यं वाति अनित्यं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं भन्ते यं पणानित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लन्नूतं समनुपस्थितम् एतं मम एषोऽहमस्मि एषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतन् भन्ते तस्मात्तीह भिक्खवे यं किञ्चिरूपम् अतीतनागतपच्चुत्पन्न अच्युत्तं वा बहित्ता वा ओलारिकं वा सुखमं वा हीनं वा पणितं वा यदूरे सन्ति केव सभ्यं रूपं नेतं मम नेसोऽहमस्मि नामेसो वत्ताति एवमेतं यथा भूतं सम्मापन्याय दत्तव्यन् या काचि वेदना तीतनागतपच्चुत्पन्ना अज्जत्ता वा बहित्ता वा ओलारिका वा सुखमा वा हीना वा पणिता वा ये दूरे सन्ति केव सब्बा वेदना नेतं मम नेसोऽहमस्मि नामेसो वत्ताति एवमेतं यथा भूतं सम्मापन्याय दत्तव्यन् या काचि संज्ञा अतीतनागतपच्चुत्पन्ना अच्युत्ता वा बहित्ता वा ओलारिका वा सुखमा वा हीना वा पणिता वा या दूरे सन्ति केव सब्बे संज्ञा नीतं मम नेसोऽहमस्मि नामेसो वत्ताति एवमेतं यथा भूतं सम्मापन्याय दत्तव्यन् ये केचि संखारा अतीतनागतपच्चुत्पन्ना अच्युत्ता वा बहित्ता वा ओलारिका वा सुखमा वा हीना वा पणिता वा यं दूरे सन्ति केव सभ्ये संकारा नेतं मम नेसोऽहमस्मि नामेसो वत्ताति एवमेतं यथा भूतं सम्मापन्याय दत्तव्यन् यं किञ्चि विज्ञानम् अतीतनागतपच्चुत्पन्ना अच्युत्तं वा बहित्ता वा ओलारिका वा सुखमा वा हीना वा पणिता वा यं दूरे सन्ति केव सभ्यं विज्ञानं नेतं मम नेसोऽहमस्मि नामेसो वत्ताति एवमेतं यथा भूतं सम्मापन्याय दत्तव्यन् एवं पश्यं भिक्खवे सुतवा आर्यशावको रूपस्मिन्पि निबध्यति वेदनायापि निबध्यति संज्ञायापि निबध्यति संखारेषुपि निबध्यति विज्ञानस्मिन्पि निबध्यति निबिदं विरज्यति विरागविमुच्यते विमुक्तस्मिन् विमुक्तम् इति ज्ञानं होति खीना जाति उसितं ब्रह्मचर्यं कथं करणीयं नापरम् इत्तत्तायातिपजानातीति इदमवोच भगवा उत्तमना पञ्चवज्ञिया भिक्खु भगवतो भासितुम् अभिनन्दम् इमस्मिन् पनव्ययाकरणस्मिन् भन्यमाने पञ्चवज्ञानां भिक्षूणाम् अनुपादाय आसावेहि विमुच्यं सूति Anattalakhana Suttam Nititham Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu. Okay. Now maybe let's look at the meaning. So essentially this sutta is trying to convey, it's called the Sutta on the Not Self, or unzipping the five aggregates. The five aggregates being the body, the form, feelings, perceptions, intentions or volitions, and the individuated consciousness. So here it says, begins with saying, "Thus have I heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling in the deer park in Isipatana in Benares, and he invited the five monks who were with him to listen to him." And so the first few verses, Buddha is just pointing out these five aggregates and how they don't listen to us, and so they're not worthy of being called the self. So it's saying, there's no way you can say your body or the form is you, because it doesn't listen to you. You can't tell your body, please be a certain way, please don't age, or please be free of disease. So how is it that you can call your body yourself? Similarly, for feelings, how can you say your feelings are yourself, because they don't listen to you? And you can't say always have pleasant feelings. So feelings are also not worthy of being called the self. Similarly, for perceptions or your memories, you can't choose how you want to perceive something. You can't say always see things a certain way. So the Buddha says the perceptions are also not worthy of being called the self. Then coming to intentions or sankhara or volitions, like you can't choose, let me always have good intentions. And so he says the intentions are also not worthy of being called the self. And finally, even consciousness, or that which is aware of the other four, you can't always say be aware, be mindful. And so he says even that is not being worthy of being called the self. So beautifully in the first few verses says that which is not in your control, that which you can't sort of dictate, how is it that you're calling that yourself? And then in the next set of verses, he questions the monks whether they believe any of these five aggregates is permanent. And he says, if it is not, and if it is forever changing, and so if we are attached to that which is impermanent and changing, and say, this is me, this is I, and this is mine, of course it leads to affliction and suffering, because their nature is to be impermanent, their nature is to change. And then here we are attaching ourselves to it and calling it ourselves. So for each of these five aggregates, again, he questions, do you believe your form is permanent, or your feelings are permanent, or your perceptions are permanent, or your intentions are permanent, or your consciousness is permanent? And he says, no, they're forever changing. So attaching to that which is changing and saying, this is I, this is me, this is mine, will only lead to affliction and suffering. And in the next few verses, goes on to sort of eliminate any sort of confusion around if you had maybe some distinctions, maybe you want to make some distinctions around this. So he says, just takes everything, like says all forms of the past, present and future, subtle and gross, inside and outside, near and far, just declare that it is not me, not mine, not I. Know this. And he says, know this through direct experience and clear insight. This is beautiful because it's not about another mental game where, so he's just sort of inviting you to check in your direct experience whether this is true or not. Is it true that this is changing? Is it true that it's not permanent? Is it true that you have no say over it? And so he says, just, so this is not me, this is not mine, this is not I. And to sort of know this is knowing that stands beyond the mind. And this is the direct insight of this. And so the Buddha says finally that one who has heard these teachings and is inclined towards these teachings and sort of is able to apply this will become disenchanted with form, feelings, perceptions, intentions, and consciousness, and find freedom. And with this freedom, there's a recognition, a knowing, and understanding. And so what has to be done has been done. And so there will be no rebirth. And the holy life has been lived. It's interesting that he says there is no rebirth, because if you realize you're none of this, then you directly know there is nothing to be born again. So thus the 5 monks who heard this discourse were instantly liberated. Thus goes the sutta. So when I first heard this, my understanding stopped at sort of realizing, okay, I see the truth about the form, feelings, perceptions, and intentions, but how is it that I'm not even the consciousness? Because I've always sort of believed I'm this consciousness or the soul. And so that's where I was confused at the time. And that's when the second catalyst sort of helped move that along, move my understanding along. So we'll get to that in the next video. Thank you for listening, and I'm forever grateful to the one I heard this from, my teacher Nitya Shanti. Yeah, so thank you.